New at 6, they've been abused, manipulated, exploited, trafficked. But now there's a place to heal dedicated just to them. Today, Roy Moss Youth Alternatives opened La Puerta, an emergency shelter for sex-trafficked children. Courtney Friedman takes us inside and shows us the place that one survivor says will change lives.
And really my story starts with child sexual abuse, right? And that abuse launched me on a journey of self-destruction.
A homeless runaway at 12 years old, Allison Franklin says men began to prey on her.
I was gang trafficked for nearly a decade in Houston, Texas. But the more insidious part was that I started getting wrapped up in the criminal justice system.
After her 9th felony arrest, taking drug charges for her trafficker, she was finally led to services that addressed the root cause.
When you see this, what do you think?
I think hope, right? A place of healing and happiness.
Franklin looks around Roy Moss Youth Alternatives' new La Puerta shelter for trafficked children.
I often think how different my life would be today if I, at 12 years old, knew of some place that I could go.
In front, there are counseling offices.
This is the dining room.
There's a resource center and a classroom.
It's 4th grade to 12th grade.
There's also a big backyard.
The bedrooms on this side of the shelter are for boys. It's a statistic many people don't know about. 40% of sex trafficking victims are boys.
It's so great to see a place like this that addresses those needs and acknowledges that this is a vulnerable population.
Private donors paid for the building's renovation. A grant from the governor's office given in October pays for the shelter's services and upkeep. Today, Franklin cut a ribbon, opening La Puerta for children who are ready to define themselves by their future instead of their past. Courtney Friedman, KSAT 12 News.
The governor's office is spreading about $18 million in grant money across centers like this throughout the state. They are 2-year grants that organizations can reapply for in the future. Music to Franklin's ears. She's now advocating for trafficking victims and training law enforcement on state and national levels.
For a minimum of 16 hours a week, one man hits the streets of San Antonio looking for homeless or trafficked youth. He checks on them, brings them food, clothes, water, and blankets, forms relationships with them in hopes of eventually bringing them to a Roy Moss Youth Alternative shelter. The organization has a drop-in center called Centro Seguro, as well as 2 emergency shelters, one specifically for trafficking survivors. I was invited to ride along for a day and gain perspective on how delicate and truly complicated these issues are.
It's a Wednesday morning around 10:30, and Roy Moss Youth Alternative Outreach Director Chuck Paul is about to make his rounds. Chief Program Officer Dr. Julie Strench joins him.
We have runaways who maybe ran away. They usually ran away for a reason. And oftentimes we think it's like delinquent behavior, but it's really not. I mean, mom's got a new boyfriend, and new boyfriend wants to have sex with you. Mom's got a drug habit, there's nothing to eat. You're taking care of younger siblings. Then you have your throwaways. Throwaways are usually kids that are LGBTQ, and they're with a family that, doesn't believe in that. And they'll tell them, listen, if you're going to be that way, you got to get out.
All those situations result in immediate danger.
It's going to take less than 48 hours for a trafficker to identify a hungry, tired kid and bring him in.
He says about 40% of the people he keeps up with have experienced trafficking.
We're going to swing through here real quick and see who's here at the Starbucks.
Paul and Strench head inside wearing a microphone. They see Lloyd Davis, who's been homeless for 2.5 years.
What's up, brother? You working today?
Tomorrow. We're off today.
When's the last time you ate?
I haven't eaten anything.
Nothing?
Can we get you something now? What do you want?
Anything's fine.
He eventually comes outside, willing to speak with us.
I got out of foster care when I was 18, so I've been stuck out here for a while. I live under the bridge right there. It's really hard being out here. I do have a job, but it's only seasonal.
Davis knows people who are being sex trafficked or have recently been trafficked.
She's off the drugs. She thought about, I can't be doing this to myself anymore.
But he says it's hard to overcome that kind of trauma when a trafficker has control and you have nowhere else to go.
It's like a ladder. You have that first step, and then you get to that middle step, and you have these obstacles that brings you back down to that first step. So you got to look past those obstacles and get to that top step.
Are you going to keep trying to get up the ladder?
Yes.
His goal, to have a roof over his head within 2 years. It may be months before these kids or young adults ask for help, but Paul wants them to know when they're ready, it's there. The next stop, the San Antonio Public Library, to look for more of Chuck's kids, as he calls them.
Oh, my kiddos.
Inside, a young couple Paul has been checking on for months is finally ready for help. He called Roy Moss staff, who immediately came to pick them up and take them to the shelter.
Broke my heart. I wanted to go cry. I'm serious.
The last stop, this Quick Trip convenience store, which is a safe place.
If you're on the streets and you're 18 and younger and you need a safe place to go, you're running from your trafficker. It's just a big yellow sign, safe place. They go into Quick Trip, staff there is all trained, YMCA the same way. I need help. They call us, we come pick you up, we take you to Centro. Take you to Centro, every kid that comes through Centro is going to get screened for trafficking. They're all going to see a counselor. They're all going to get a full assessment. If they have been trafficked, then the balloon goes up. We have a system here in Bexar County. We're one of 3 counties that does.
An intricate system designed to show these youth someone cares. Something Strench says the public can help with.
Just say, can I help you? Are you okay? Is there something I can do for you? Most of them will tell you what they need. And if you personally can't give it to them, there's so many agencies that will help them.
These are such incredible people who are doing really important work, so I thank them for taking me with them that day. Roy Moss has an emergency shelter called The Bridge. They also have the Meadowland facility where kids can stay more long-term until they're 18. And then there's a brand new shelter, La Puerta, which is for trafficking survivors only. And we've been there. It just opened recently. It's pretty amazing.
And Courtney, I know in previous stories you've talked about how traffickers don't just target the young, homeless, vulnerable population.
Yes, and that's really important to know and what they want the public to know. Paul says it's common for the strategy for the traffickers to target those vulnerable homeless street youth, but they also look for foster children as well as anyone online. It's children, men, women from all different backgrounds, and they make a connection with you. They make you think you're in a relationship, then they slowly isolate the people who are around you and eventually gain control, may sell you for sex, and then keep you there with threats and abuse. So it's really hard to leave once you're in that situation.
Very important to be a parent and just be on top of those kids and just make sure you know everything that they're looking at online.
Absolutely. It's a great point. We have all those resources online. So if you want to report possible trafficking or just learn more about it, visit our website, ksat.com.
Thanks, Courtney.
For months, she was sex trafficked by one of the most dangerous traffickers in the country. Carla Solomon barely survived months of torture and what's known as modern slavery. But now that she's safe and alive, she's dedicated her life to telling her devastating but important story in hopes of saving lives. We want to warn you, this content may be disturbing to some viewers.
I was put in a situation where I felt that I had no body and no other choice.
Carla Solomon has been trafficked twice in her life, once as a child and once as an adult.
About 2 years old, I was taken from my mother. My mother was a drug addict.
At 12 years old, she met a 33-year-old woman who she thought cared about her.
She introduced me to smoking weed and doing drugs and introduced me to older men and started taking me to parties. And I ended up losing my virginity at one of these parties, and not by choice.
Soon the woman sold Solomon to men in exchange for drugs. It lasted a couple months until she broke free.
But that also started a cycle that whenever I would run away, I would have survival sex to have a place to stay or for a meal. For a chicken nugget meal at McDonald's, I would have to have sex with somebody.
Later in life, at 29 years old, she fell into the hands of a dangerous man.
He was completely doting on me, taking me to the most expensive hotel rooms and just spending the whole night pampering me, finding out all my hopes and dreams and aspirations.
She believed she was in a loving relationship.
My Prince Charming turned into a monster like that. He takes me to a hotel and he places an ad on Backpage, and he whispers in my ear and he kisses me on my neck and he tells me he just needs me to do it one time until he finds another girl, and I do it. But then I have to do it again and again and again, and before you know it, I have a $1,500 a day quota.
He took her from Texas to Louisiana to Colorado, where she finally called for help and tried to run.
I start getting text messages on my phone telling me I better come back. He sent me a video, and that's where my daughter gets on and off the bus. He told me, if you don't come back, I'm gonna take her and I'm gonna do the same thing to her.
He took her back to Texas, where police finally caught up to them and arrested Fox for the first time.
The police took me to the hospital. I had STDs, I had broken ribs, I was 100 pounds. I was addicted to methamphetamine. They diagnosed me with complex PTSD.
After another arrest, Fox took a plea deal and was sentenced to 30 years in prison. But back in Texas, Solomon struggled and even tried to take her life. But a friend stepped in, and her trauma suddenly became her recovery.
We started a ministry together. We just opened our first safe house for girls just like me. We're looking to expand.
At 33, she now lives with her loving husband and 3 children, working daily to save others like her.
There's this one girl that I've been working with, and she's left and came back and left and came back, and I get it. And she's finally made the decision, no, I'm not going back. And I mean, that was just the most beautiful.
Because you did.
Because I did that.
Her body now a symbol of her story.
The broken chains signify that, yes, I have been in slavery, but I broke them. I broke free in more ways than one. That is my freedom, and I'm obviously no longer for sale.
Powerful reporting there, Courtney. Carla's story, unfortunately, not unique. So many people might wonder, why do these victims not run away or try to get out of the situation?
Yeah, it's a really common question, and advocates are hoping people will understand so they don't have to ask that. Carla is a perfect example of this. This man built trust with her. He told her he loved her, isolated her from her family and loved ones. And then when he started that abuse, he, of course, as you saw in the story, threatened her family. And these people feel like they have nowhere else to go, and they don't want anyone else to be hurt by the situation they're in.
And we often think of women as being the targets of this, but this can be anybody.
Absolutely. And that's another thing that we need to understand is this can be young boys, young girls, men and women, and from all different backgrounds. I've learned that, main targets at first may be homeless on the street, even, foster children. But then, of course, they target people online now. They make those connections online, ask you to be friends, build relationships, and then that can turn into the same one. So it's important to be aware that who you're communicating with online it may be dangerous, and reach out if you are in trouble. So if someone is at risk or in danger, there are so many people in our community ready to help. The National Human Trafficking Hotline has been on the screen this entire time, 888-373-7888. And then on our website, at the bottom of this web story, there is an entire list of resources.
Thank you for sharing her story, Courtney.
Absolutely.